Vijay and Nitin Bhai, are you there? So we'll turn this over for the next session for daily wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Talk about what is true yoga. So Vijay and Nitin Bhai, are you there? Go ahead.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Radhe Radhe, Nitinji, over to you. Thank you, Sunil Bhai. Thank you, Madanji.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, Sunil Bhai and Madan Bhai, for a wonderful session, like always. So, good morning, good evening, everybody. Radhe Radhe. A very warm welcome to Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. I hope you enjoyed the yoga fest that we had for the past 1 week. And today I thought we will have a little bit of a continuation since we've been listening to so many topics on yoga. I said, let's continue it to get a little more depth into the different forms of yoga, so to say, and the different possibilities around that. It's a very fascinating topic. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand that. Like all roads lead to Rome. What difference does each path make? How does it fundamentally change our approach? And what is the end goal, even though it's God? What is it that it entails taking up each one of these paths? So that is what we are going to discuss today and tomorrow. So again, a very warm welcome. Hope you had a good time over the last 1 week. So many gems, so many treasures that were presented throughout the week. And I loved it simply, including the Bhakti concert that we had. So let's get started with our opening prayers and then we'll get into the topic for discussion today. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right. Are you able to see the screen?
All good. Yes. Yes.
Great. Okay. Let's get started with our opening prayers by invoking the blessings of God and Guru. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening again, everyone. A very warm welcome to Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita class. So let's get started. Today I picked up a shloka. Again, going to take a little bit detour here. Shloka which is related to yoga, how yoga has been explained in Bhagavad Gita. And then we will get into the topic of our discussion today. Want to make it a very interactive discussion because these topics are often confusing. We interchangeably use a lot of terms and it's important to have clarity on those. Because it does have a bearing on our spiritual path and the approach we take and the way we approach this whole thing. So let's get started. So I picked up chapter. Okay, so all right, before I get into that, so this is a topic that we'll be discussing. What is true yoga? What does yoga mean actually? And what are the possibilities through yoga based on the different yogic paths? Of course, it will take us to God. Still, there is a difference. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's get started. So I picked up chapter 6, shlok 23 today. Let's get started and you're welcome to follow along. Tam vidyad dukkha sanyog viyogam yoga sangitam sanishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa. All right.
I see a couple of hand raised.
Sure. Let's get started.
Surendraji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Surendraji. How are you doing?
Are you? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Radhe Radhe, Surendra ji. Please go ahead.
Tam vidyad dukha sanyog viyogam yogasya tam sa nishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvyasnachetasa. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, thank you, Surendra ji. Satam vidyad dukkha sanyog viyogam yoga sangitam. Meter there, but thank you very much. And good to see you back, Surendra ji. Hope you had a great trip.
Yeah, I had 10 days.
All right, thank you. All right, let's take.
Ashutosh ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Ashutosh.
Tam vidyad dukh sanyog viyogam yoga sanjitam sanischayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa.
Very nice, Ashutosh ji. I have a feeling you will be singing once more today. Okay, so we'll see. All right, let's move on and see a few more hands.
Shyam ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Shyam ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Shyam ji.
Tam vidyad dukh sanyog viyogam yoga sangitam sa nischayena yogatavyo yogo nirvena chetasa. Radhe Radhe.
Shyam ji, Radhe Radhe. All right.
Rahul ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Jai Shri Krishna. Tam vidya dukha sanyog viyogam yoga sanjitam sa nishchayen yoktavyo yogo nirvirna chetasa. Jai Mata Di.
Thank you, Rahul ji. Jai Shri Ram. All right. Let's take a few more hands.
Sandhya ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Sandhya.
Yes, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Tam vidyad dukkha sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam sa nishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvirna chetasa.
Wonderful. Very nice, Sandhya. Okay. let's-
Lakshmi ji, yeah, we have a couple of hand raised. Lakshmi ji,
Sure. We
yes,
are doing after a long time, so let's give everybody an opportunity.
yeah, sorry, Lakshmi ji, yes.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe everyone. Tam vidya dukkha samyogo viyogam yoga sangitam sanischayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa. Thank
Very
you.
nice, Lakshmi ji. Seeing you in the bus gives me a feeling of deja vu, like been there, seen it before. Good to see you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good to see you all. Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Okay, we can take the remaining.
Yeah, ji, yeah, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Tam vidya dukkha sanyoga viyogam yoga sannitam sanishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa.
Nice, Riya ji.
Radhe
Radhe
Radhe.
Radhe. All right, we can down to our last four, so let's quickly take those.
Yes, Lakshmi ji, Radhe Radhe.
Lakshmi ji has already done that.
Somesh ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe.
Tam vidyad dukha samyoga viyogam yoga sanjitam sa nichena yoktavyo.
Hello, Baba.
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Sumesh ji. Okay.
Naren ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Naren ji.
Radhe Tan vidyad dukh sanyogam viyogam yoga sanjitam sa nischayena yoktavyo yogo nirvanna chetasa.
Very nice, Narendra ji. Thank you very much. All right, last three.
Yes, Shruti ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe Pallavi ji, Radhe Radhe Nitin. Tam vidyad तं विद्ययादुःख संयोग वियोग योग संयुतं स निश्चयेन युक्तव्यो योगो निर्विण्ण चेतसा.
Very nice, Shruti. Wonderful. All right, last two hands and then we'll get started.
Yes, Sri Ramya ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Tam vidya dukha sanyoga viyogam yoga sannitam ta nischayena yuktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Ramya. Very nice. All right. Rupaji,
Last not the least, yeah. Rupa ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Tam vidya dukha sanyoga viyogam yogasnitam sanischayena yuktavya yoga nirvana chetasa.
Very nice, Rupaji. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get started. Been a while, so let's get back into the groove today.
I think Asha ji has also raised her hand.
All right, we'll take one more then, Asha ji. Real quick. Let's do that.
Thank you, Asha ji. Thank you for waiting. Sorry, I missed you.
No, it's okay. I wanted to give such one suggestion for this shlok. मेरी समझ जो है, मैं बोलने में वक्त नहीं करूँगी क्योंकि डिस्कशन ज्यादा महत्व का है नितिन जी का. मगर मैं ये कहूँगी कि तम विद्यात दुख संयोग, हम सब ने जो अलग किया, ये शब्द एक ही होना चाहिए मेरी समझ से. मेरी समझ गलत भी हो सकती है. तम विद्यात दुख संयोग वियोगम, इट इज वन वर्ड, क्योंकि इसमें अर्थ में ये है कि दुख संयोग से जो योग हमें अलग करता है वही योग कहलाता है. दैट्स व्हाट आई अंडरस्टैंड. तो वो बोलने में मेरी हम्बल समझ ये है कि तम विद्यात दुख संयोग, फिर अटकना नहीं है. तम विद्यात दुख संयोग वियोगम, that's the one word should be pronounced. I think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha ji. All right. How do we maintain meter along with that is something I'll have to check, because you have to, this fits with a meter also, right? So if we say dukha sanyog viyogam, then yoga sangitam will not fit in. So I'll have to check it out. How do we accommodate that? But thank you for your input. So let's get started now. So the short translation for this shloka goes like, that state of severance from union with misery is known as yoga. Severance from union with misery is known as yoga. So we'll go deeper into that. There are two aspects to it, is what we are going to see. This yoga should be resolutely practiced with determination, free from pessimism. See, one of the things related to the path of spirituality is the spiritualist is asha. He has a lot of asha bandhan, optimism, not pessimism, that, oh God, it's not doable, what will happen, life is so bad. No, optimism is one of the things. But anyway, we are going to focus on the first aspect of it, and we'll go a little bit on the yoga aspect of it, because there are so many yogas, right? Hath yoga, kriya yoga, Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and so on and so forth. So we'll focus more on that today. We'll have another discussion on this because this is a pretty deep topic. So let's get started. Now, let's look at, here you have misery, and on the other end you have bliss. Right? Misery is negative, bliss is positive, in between comes something neutral. Okay. So this is, now if we go back here, the shloka, severance from union with misery is known as yoga. Okay, so just keep that definition in mind. So you have misery, in between, and neutral, right? So let's say this is where we are. So when you are out of misery, okay, that is what is called as yoga. Is that all? No, it goes much beyond. Okay, you are now from neutral to bliss. Okay, that is the possibility in spirituality. Both options are there. So you can come up to neutral or you go up to bliss. Okay. Now, if you look at it, this is a little bit like this. Here you have misery. Misery gone. That's a good thing. Misery is gone. but the bliss you have attained. Okay, that is the key. Dukh nivritti is one aspect of it. The attainment of bliss is the key. Okay. So yoga has been defined as both attainment of bliss and freedom from misery. That is essentially what yoga is. Now let's continue. What our scriptures are telling us, right? Bhakti Shatak. Bhakti Shatak, I picked up a verse. Who wants to recite that? I think somebody would be really excited to not only recite but sing it as well. Do I see any hand? All right, Sri Ramyaji, please go ahead. And Ashutoshji. All right, you'll have another one, Ashutoshji. Go ahead, please, Sri Ramyaji. Real quick. Okay.
Sorry, I was not unmuted. Radhe Radhe, I'm not sure if I can get the meter right. I will attempt.
No worries. You have Ashutoshji covering your back, okay? He'll get meter right and sing along as well. So please go ahead. Try it out.
Karma yoga arugyana sat sadhana yadapi vakahan pai binu bhakti sabai jano mritak te binu pran. Sorry, it was bad.
No worries. Very true. Very nice. You want to try it out, Ashutoshji, real quick?
Go ahead, Ashutoshji. Radhe Radhe.
कर्म योग ज्ञान सब साधन यद्यपि बहान राधे राधे पै बिनु भक्ति सबै जनु मृतक देह बिनु प्राण राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So basically what it says is all the scriptures defines the path of karma, yoga and jnana. If these are without bhakti, devotion, these paths are like a dead body with no soul. Very powerful statement. So it's like Amrit. Amrit, whichever thing you put it in becomes Amrit. Right? You put it in Coke, Coke will become Amrit. Amrit will not become Coke. You put it in Lassi, Lassi will become Amrit. You put it in water, you put it in milk, it will become. So the secret ingredient in all of these paths is devotion. The yoga aspect actually refers to devotion. Not just that, okay. Another bhakti verse, Shatak verse. You want to do that real quick again? Ashutoshi? Krishna. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, real quick.
कृष्ण कृपा बिनु जाय नहीं माया अति बलवान राधे राधे शरणागत पर हो कृपा यह गीता को ज्ञान राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे.
Very nice. So in this one, Maharaj is saying Maya is so powerful that it cannot be eliminated without Shaktiman Krishna's grace. That grace is received only by selflessly surrendering to him. This is the essence of Gita teachings. Now you would say, where in Gita is it saying? Right? By the way, Bhakti Shatak is such a wonderful compilation. It is like in Gagar, he has put a sagar in 100 couplets. Each one of these, Swamiji can actually go on to explain it for a month. That is how, and even that is not enough. Okay, so they may seem ordinary. Okay, let's understand the sense of it on the surface, but they are so deep and so profound and so sentient. Vedic Rijhas, he conversed with the Vedic Rijhas to actually put it in. They are so profound. So anyways, in this one, let's just look at it where it's saying that without the Shaktiman Krishna's grace, that too by surrendering onto him, that is what Gita is telling as well, right? Now you will say, where is Gita telling that? Okay, I pulled it up as well. Gita says it at multiple places, but I pulled up one of the, but I'll get into that, okay? Before I get into that, let's look at the Gita shloka as well. Here, Lord Krishna himself is talking about, right? If you look at this verse, 7:14, Devi Hvesha Gunamai Mam Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. So he's saying that it's very difficult to overcome this Maya. It's Maya energy. So if we can overcome by self-effort, that means we have defeated God. although it is his inferior energy, overcoming Maya on our self-effort is as good as overcoming God, defeating God. Not possible. And God is saying, but those who surrender unto me cross over it easily. Now, this concept of surrender, the beauty of our scriptures is, if we go back, even in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, right, it talks about Ishwar Pranidhana. If you look at its 32 verse, it talks about Ishwar Pranidhana. It's talking about the concept of surrender to God. Okay, this concept. So I'm just bringing in some concepts and I'll bring it all together. We have spoken about Bhakti. We have spoken about the concept of surrendering to God. We have spoken about the grace of God. And even Lord Krishna himself in 18.66 says, abandon all varieties of dharmas and simply surrender unto me alone. Okay, so this concept of surrender is coming from Patanjali Yoga Sutra. It's coming from Bhagavad Gita and Bhakti Shatak anyway, is an amalgamation or a distillation of pretty much the entire scriptures. Okay, so that is what our scriptures are telling us is the only way to cross over Maya. Then of course, the question comes, there are so many paths. Do they enable us to overcome Maya? Okay, that next logical question is, we have so many paths. We have Gyan Marg, we have Bhakti Marg, and then we have so many, the offshoots of Gyan Marg like Hatha Yoga, Ashtang Yoga, Kriya Yoga, all that stuff. Where do they take us? Do they have an ability to take us across Maya or not? Okay, so hold on to that question. Let's tackle that little bit today and more in detail. So surrender part we have spoken about. Lord Krishna himself is talking about it. Now let's talk about this concept. Now this is an axis. And here are the material desires in positive, increasing on the left-hand side. So on the left-hand side, the material desire is there at its peak. Okay, so let's say this box basically represents the material desires. Bhukti, as we call it, it is called material aspiration. Bhukti. I want this house, I want this car, I want a 6-digit salary, I want to be at so and so place and all that stuff. This is called material aspiration, which is called Bhukti. Okay. And there cannot be spirituality with desire, basically. It's basically, if it takes a backseat, it requires diminishing it over time. Bhukti has to diminish over time. If it is increasing, that means the spiritual progress is not being made. It's a very simple yardstick on the path of spirituality. So the aspirations for the world, they need to be looked at into perspective. And if somebody actually is progressing spiritually, one of the simple yardstick is to see if we are getting some shanti, peace around the cravings for the world or not. If you're not getting, that means something is not right. I like this, I think in one of the sessions, it said that these three things, when we look at it for ourselves, one was the people, second was the object, and third were the activities. When these three things, Vastu, Vishay and Kriya, they are directed towards yourself to gain something for a selfish interest, they do not give us bliss. They may give us a quick shot, feeling of high from time to time, but over time they give misery only. So these three things, when we look at it for ourselves, actually fall into Bhukti realm only. Okay. Now what happens if you have Bhukti? Let's say this much Bhukti you have, okay, quantitatively. Let's say that was the way to look at it. When it shrinks, right, you are able to conquer Bhukti. Then you have come to desire zero. This is called what Buddhism also says, Mukti, Nirvana, moksha. That is where you gain. They said you get over with it, and that's when you get Nirvana, moksha part of it. There is another ingredient to it. So when we reject both Bhukti and Mukti, this is called Mukti, Nirvana and moksha. Right? When we reject both of these, then we enter a newer realm, which is called the spiritual desires. Same principle where you are not reducing the desire to neutral or zero, but you are taking it to the positive direction here. Now here you have rejected Bhukti and Mukti. Mukti is an entry point to spirituality. Mukti is not an ordinary state. Moksha, Mukti is a spiritual bliss. When we reach that stage, that means it is a simultaneous perpetual bliss of God. Okay, it's not an ordinary thing. Nirvana, moksha that we talk about. Having said that, that is just an entry point to spirituality. Okay. When you reject Mukti and Bhukti both, then what happens? And you cultivate a desire to serve God, and for the sake of God's happiness, that's when you have entered into the realm of bhakti. Okay, so beyond bhakti and mukti, now you get into bhakti, which is a spiritual aspiration again. And when you ask for nishkam or selfless seva of God, that is your goal. That is when you get the divine love, which is the topmost prize of God. But typically, this is how this whole sequence goes. Right. So if you look at it, it starts with material desire. They have to diminish over time because you are actually moving towards a higher kind of a desire or no desire whatsoever for material thing. That would lead you to nirvana, moksha. And when you reject that as well, that will lead you to divine love. Now, can you do it? Does it have to be sequential? No, of course not. You can actually cultivate the sentiments to serve God selflessly or to love God right from the word go. You don't have to first go to nirvana and then say, hey, by the way, there's something more. No, it doesn't work that way. So you can build those sanskars right up front, and that is essentially the bhakti marg. Now, even in nirvana, for that matter, that moksha that we're talking about, what is the secret ingredient? It is called bhakti. Why it is called bhakti? Because Lord Krishna is saying, yes, Lakshmi, you had a question?
You explain what is mukti again?
Mukti is nirvana, where you are beyond material world. You are not obligated to come back to the material world. And in fact, it is said, it is like you merge with God. You merge with God. There are different kinds of muktis. I'm not getting into that, but you simply merge with God. That is called mukti, which is nirvana, moksha also called. You are jivan mukta at that point. Okay, so that is the peak of Gyan Yoga. Now the question comes, can you do it on self-effort alone? Because scriptures are saying that you need God's grace for that. You need to surrender to God for that. So if you are just focusing on your self-effort, can you achieve that? The answer is no. If you continue working on your path, whichever path it is, no matter what you are doing, whether you're doing Hatha Yoga, you're doing Kriya Yoga, you're doing Gyan Yoga, if you are not surrendered to God. See, Patanjali Yoga Sutra also talks about the concept of Ishwar Pranidhanan. That means surrender to God. Only when we surrender to God, we get His grace. And when He gets His grace, that's how we can conquer that. So it is said in Gyan Marg, by your self-effort, you can transcend your gunas. That means you can go from up to sattva guna. And even beyond that, when it comes to conquering Maya, there are two aspects of Maya, Vidya Maya and Avidya Maya. You can conquer Avidya Maya, but in order for you to conquer Vidya Maya, you still need to surrender to God. Otherwise, you cannot conquer Maya. It's a very simple principle. No matter which path you take, finally we have to surrender to God, and only through His grace we can conquer Maya. So even to get moksha, we have to surrender to God. And moksha is just an entry point. I'll explain it with an analogy so that it makes sense. Right now, we may not be able to appreciate what's the difference between moksha and divine love. So I will illustrate it with some kind of an example so that it makes sense. Any questions so far on this before I move further?
So there is a question in chat, Nitinji. A question is from Samji. Is the goal of Advait Vedantis and Buddhist are same?
So it talks about nirvana and moksha. So yes, in that way, it is same. Okay. Buddha's 4 tenets were, there is misery in this world. The cause of misery is desire. You kill desire, you will kill misery. And the goal of Jnani is also Dukha Nivritti. Okay, so in that sense, both are same. Does that answer your question?
Samji, I think.
She's not giving a very encouraging.
Yeah, she is giving thumbs up. I have also a quick question, Nitinji, if I can ask a quick short question. So Mukti, Nirvan, Moksha, either of them means that no rebirth, right?
True, very true. It is a spiritual state. It is not a material state. Very true. Good question. That means no obligation to come back to the material world. Very true.
Okay.
You are a done deal.
Okay. So that is the Puri state, right?
Now the quality of Puris can vary. That's what we'll get into. But yeah, you are a Puri.
Okay.
You are not Aarti, you are a Puri now. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this?
Surender ji has question.
Yes, Surendra ji. All right. I'll illustrate the concept, the difference between moksha and divine love through a very simple analogy that will help. But
I think my query will be answered by your next explanation, because I understand Mukti, Nirvan, Moksha. Then where do I remain for the purpose of divine love? That's the.
You forfeited the opportunity for divine love. You took admission in a state college. Okay, so IIT will not give you cannot do 2 colleges at the same time. Okay, so it's as simple as that. You, instead of tasting the honey, you chose to become honey yourself. Okay, you said, I will not taste Rasgulla, I will become Rasgulla. So God says, all right, so be it.
I wait for your next.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see. Let's take a few questions, then I'll move forward on that, because it will have a little more discussion around it.
Yes, Rasmi. Asha ji, please go ahead.
Me?
Yes, Asha ji.
हाँ, मेरा भी ये प्रश्न था, जैसे कि आगे कहा गया कि अगर हम इस स्टेज में जाते जाते मुक्ति पा लेते हैं, तो जैसे ही सभी भक्तों ने कहा है कि हमें मुक्ति नहीं चाहिए, ह्यूमन फॉर्म ही चाहिए, क्योंकि बार बार इससे हम भक्ति का स्टेज डिवाइन लव तक पहुंच सकते हैं। तो मुक्ति के बाद अगर ईश्वर में रिबर्थ नहीं होगा, तो ह्यूमन बर्थ नहीं मिलेगा, तो हम कैसे डिवाइन लव भक्ति कर सकते?
So it's not like, देखो, ना रहेगा बांस ना बजेगी बांसुरी. That is what mukti is. So in Bhakti Marg they say it is a blot, it's a blemish. It's better to continue to be in human rather than go for mukti, because bhukti and mukti are the maid servants of bhakti. When you get bhakti, mukti and bhukti are already following you. They are the byproduct of it. That is.
But we can choose, no, as a bhakt के हमें नहीं चाहिए ये, जैसे महाराज जी ने कहा है कि मुक्ति ये पिशाचिनी है, वो वर्ड तो बहुत ज्यादा है, मगर उनके शब्दों में मैं याद करती हूँ कि ये है, तो हमें अवॉइड करके भक्त बनना हो और आगे जो ब्लिस लेनी हो, तो ये अवॉइड करके हम आगे निकल सकते हैं. तो we have to choose by the grace of God.
True, you reject bhukti and mukti. In fact, the fundamental approach that you would take on this path would not even take you to the path of mukti, right? You are already building sanskars for you to take. See, mukti is like, they call it is, you are relishing the effulgence of Lord Krishna. That's all it is. Okay, the light that emanates from the toenail, that is where you are happy. Okay, I'm good with that. Beyond that, his personal association starts, right? We spoke about all the bhavs, Sankhya bhav, Shant bhav, then the other bhav where you get more closer as a Sakha bhav, then you get more closer as a Vatsalya bhav, then you get more closer as a Madhurya bhav, Dasya bhav, all that stuff. That is personal association. So you start building those bhavs right from the word go. In Brahmalina Avastha, you are in a Birja river, they say, where you are just merged with the effulgence, and that is all you get, because that is how you envisioned God all along. There are people who just focus on Om. Why would God meet them in his full Sagun Sakar Swarup? Because they have thought of God as Om. God will meet them in that form. There are people who think of God as light. You have tied his hand for grace. Why will he grace you? He said, you want to meet me as a light, I'll meet you as a light. Only if you think of God in his personal form, that to the relationship that you have built, that is how he'll meet you. It's a very simple principle. People who worship God as light and make mukti as their aim, they'll get mukti. That is also a great result, but if you look at the possibilities from a bhakti standpoint, I'll show you something that will help you understand. Then there's a bigger possibility as well. But then more often than the path chooses you because we have past sanskars. We have started digging a well, and based on that, your mind will naturally gravitate towards a particular thing more than other. That is what happens. But with knowledge, that can always be tweaked. It is said that Brahmalin, people who are Brahmalin, when Krishna does his daya, kripa, if they have had bhakti sanskars in one of their lives, he may send them a rasik saint their way and actually tell them, hey, by the way, what you are doing is good, but there is something better, come along. But very few Brahmalin people get that opportunity even after God realization. Not everybody does. But bhaktas, that is the only way to do.
That's what I understood, that Narsi Mehta ne kaha ki hari na jan to mukti na maage fari fari avatar hai. Automatically we have to be eligible of that stage, that we can get the special grace, that we avoiding the mukti and bhukti, and we can get the divine love, the ultimate goal of bhakta.
With knowledge, we will keep on rejecting everything, like a vegetarian rejects everything in the fish market, and then we get the bhakti, parabhakti, and all the personal bliss of God. So that is the idea. That is why tattva gyan has to be really solid, because if we don't have tattva gyan, we can slip easily. When God starts giving us bhukti, all right, I'll give you fame, I'll give you money, that's where we'll slip. He has not started giving us the bliss of moksha and all that stuff. So just we will slip in bhukti also, unless our knowledge is rock solid. We have really contemplated upon it. There is every chance we can slip. So that is the key. Thank you, Ashaji.
Thank you.
Beautifully explained. Yeah, I see a couple of hand raised. Nitinji, if we can take.
Sure.
Yeah, Samji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. So Nitinji, those who have already attained moksha, nirvana, liberation, who have already become Rasgulla, will they ever have a chance to come into Bhakti path, or are they eternally damned in liberation?
Mostly, Maharaji says, you have forfeited a big opportunity, because that's where your sanskars led you, right? Gyan yogis, you try to get them in bhakti, they will not. That is how they stand. However, he also said that if you have had bhakti sanskars ever, we don't know what is that algorithm for God. He may send, I'll give you an example in the next slide. He can actually do that mercy on, kripa on you, and send a rasik saint along your way and give you the bhakti bliss as well. But not everybody. You have actually given up that opportunity. That is why Maharajji says it's better to continue coming as human and rotate in 8.4 million, but never go for moksha, because we are forfeiting a big opportunity of God's personal bliss and the opportunity to serve Him, which is our constitutional position. That is the key.
Okay.
Okay, couple, real quick.
Yes, Keshavji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
I'll tell you about Krishna, how cool he is. Okay, in the next slide. Yes, please.
I think I'm not able to unmute him, Keshavji. Got disconnected.
I'm able to, or not.
Okay. I think he got disconnected.
You need to, yes, Chandruji, maybe we can take.
Chandruji, Radhe
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Chandruji, nice to hear you again.
Nice to see you, Pallaviji. Radhe Radhe, Nitinji. So there's no wishy-washy about this. There's no one way or another way. It's just plain old, spirituality. There cannot be desire. The desire has to be completely out to gain complete, with bhakti. And our prayer, I noticed, is also saying the same thing, Dainik Pratna, right? It says, E Sharan Sharan, Tumhari Kripa ke bina tumhe koi jaan bhi to nahi sakta. Aisi sthiti mein, He Akaran Karan Pati Pavan Sri Krishna, tum apni ahetu ki kripa se hi humko apna lo. He Karuna Sagar, hum bhukti mukti आदि कुछ नहीं मांगते. मैं तो केवल तुम्हारे निष्काम प्रेम की ही एकमात्र चाह है. हे जीवन धन अब बहुत हो चुका, अब तो तुम्हारे प्रेम के बिना यह जीवन मृत्यु से भी अधिक भयानक है. अतएव प्रेम भिक्षाम देहि. So our prayer just starts with that same message. No material opulence can give us the bhakti. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you so much. Thank you for revising that with us, Chandruji. Very, very true. So the desire, not bad. Real desire is something that that is we are being told about to diminish that, but spiritual desire is good. The same thing, which is a affliction in the material world, becomes our asset when we channelize or dovetail it towards a spiritual path. Okay, one more. Yes,
Yes,
Keshav,
Ji, please go ahead.
please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Yeah, Bhukti, Mukti is very clear to me. Bhukti is worldly desires, and Mukti is something different, which is debatable thing. Because Mukti is the union of soul with super soul. So when there is union of soul with super soul, that is the extreme goal.
Yes.
Because Krishna says very clearly, Sardharman Paritajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraj, Aham Tvam Sar Papebhya Moksha. He gives moksha. He gave moksha to Arjun, but not Mukti. Mukti we have to achieve. And Mukti we have to achieve by Bhakti. Bhakti Bhav se. Surrendering, but not surrendering. I'm surrendering. No, that is not surrendering. Surrendering with Bhakti Bhav. Only then we can get Mukti. That is salvation.
True.
Moksha is moksha. मोह का क्षय होना, मोह का खत्म होना, मोह जो हमारा वर्ल्डली डिजायर्स, इवन के चिल्ड्रन, फैमिली, पेरेंट्स, ब्रदर्स, सिस्टर्स, materialistic things, तो forget it. They are bhukti, useless, stupidity. But for mukti, we have that is at the time of death. If we remember God, Purushottam Krishna in the heart, and then at that time, if soul doesn't have to go another body, goes direct to Param Dham, that is Mukti. It is not by living. Om Jai Shri Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Keshavji. Beautiful points, very true. In fact, Bhagavad Gita ends at moksha only. Moh ka kshay, that is very true. Having said that, where Bhagavad Gita ends, Bhagavatam begins. So I'm getting into the next level now. And Bhagavatam says, Dharam, Karam, Arth and Moksha. Leave aside these three things. Now let's enter the bigger realities of Bhakti. So Moksha is where Bhagavad Gita ends. It's a very high goal. And Gyan Marg, that is the peak. Ashtang Marg, that is the peak. The union with soul. In Bhakti, it's not union, it is serving God and being a part of His eternal pastime. So it is a different aspiration altogether. It will become more clear as we go along. That is where a lot of people keep on getting confused. Moksha is not an ordinary thing, for sure. But moksha is not the be-all and end-all of everything as well. That is where Bhagavatam begins, and it takes us into the depths of Bhakti. It goes much beyond moksha as well. Right? We spoke about all the bhags. But anyway, the moksha will give you Brahmanand. You call it Brahmalin, where you become Brahmalin. And that is what we are going to talk about a little bit more now. So let's move on to the next slide. So here, Chitta Vrit Nivritti in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, right? So a Jnani would say in Ashtanga Yoga and all those practicing, this Chitta, right? If this is through our Chitta, we experience things around us. And the goal of a Jnani, and even in Ashtanga Marga, is they say, I am going to kill this Chitta. Once it is done deal, and I merge with God, there is absolutely nothing there to experience or anything, right? You are in simultaneously bliss. Aapne moh ka kshay kar diya, and you are a done deal at that point. So this, it refers to basically finishing off your chit itself. However, you have another guy called Chittachor. Now, if a Jnani has already finished off his Chitta, how can he churao his Chit? That means people whose Chit he's stealing are ordinary people. They cannot be people who have achieved moksha. How can it be? It's how do you reconcile these two things? So this is where, Samji, your question gets answered. Okay, now you have to stop reading curd rice and focus attention, because what happens is people who have finished off their chitta, when he graces, because of whatever reason, he can give them back their chit, the same chit that they had finished off, and then steals it. That is the strong pull of Krishna is. That is why he's called Chitta Chor. Paramdes, Shukdev Paramhans. He was a Paramhans. He was not an ordinary people who remained in mother's womb for, I believe, 12 years or something. He didn't want to come out because in his Leela, I thought I'll get overcome by Maya. And as soon as he came out after 12 years, he simply walked off to the forest in that state and started meditating. Okay, people went there to break his samadhi. Nobody could do that. They tried all kind of tricks. Nobody could do that. And Vedvyas, his father, finally told him, go speak this verse in his ear and see what happens. And that was talking about Lord Krishna in one of his pastimes. What he did, he simply uttered that word in his ears. Shukadev Paramhans, who was a Brahmalin. He was a Paramhans. Okay, moksha is like, it's like a person who's Brahmalin, means he's already achieved moksha. That person, when he heard that verse in his ear, immediately his eyes opened up. That is the pull of Lord Krishna. Okay, and that is why he's called Chitta Chor. But he graces only few people, not everybody. Brahmalin is a Brahmalin thing. So it is called, the bliss of moksha is called Brahmanand. Okay, you can check it out. The Brahmanand means, you may have heard this thing, Brahman. So when you become lean in Brahman or you merge with Brahman, you called it as a Brahmanand. So let's try to understand it a little bit. Okay, what does it mean? So which one is heavier? Let me throw this question out to you. This will put things in perspective. Which one is heavier? Here you have, on one side you have Premanand, on the other side you have Brahmanand. So let me throw another dimension to it. Here you have an ocean of Brahmanand on one side, and on the other side you have a drop. Now let's define both of the Anands as well. It is the bliss of moksha, bliss of impersonal God, bliss of Nirakar aspect of God, bliss of Brahman. That is what Brahmanand is. Let's define Premanand. Premanand is divine love of God, personal form, bliss of personal form of God, bliss of Sagar, Sagun Sakar aspect of God, not a Nirgun, Nirakar, Nirvishesh aspect of God. Now on one hand you have ocean of Brahmanand, on the other hand you have a drop of Premanand. Which one do you think would be heavier? Yes, Asha ji.
Yes, Asha.
Premanand is invaluable in comparison with Brahmanand.
Brahmanand, the scale tilted in favor of Brahmanand. But yes, I will come back to that. So what you said is true, because I would insert another dimension to it. I'm saying let's not even take a drop. Let's take a needle, put it in that drop, and take that needle worth of Premanand. Still it is higher. If a guy who has taken moksha experiences, who's in the ocean of moksha, that bliss, perpetual simultaneous, he tastes not even a drop, a trace of that drop, he will give up infinite Brahmanands. That is what our scriptures are telling the possibility of divine love is. That can only be attained through a servitude, selfless love towards God, not by killing desires alone, not by doing the kshaya of moksha. That is fine. You have finished off. You have come to zero. You have still not come to positive. That is what Bhagavatam tells us. Bhagavad Gita stops at moksha. This is the key. Any questions on that? It's an interesting topic and pretty deep topic. Not easily accessible for sure, but it's only Maharajji and Swamiji, we have the fortune of getting into the depths of these concepts. But normally people, they think moksha, mukti, jivan mukti and all that stuff, and that's where it stops basically. No understanding beyond that. Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Nitinji, for explaining such difficult and deep concepts and sharing that with us. Thank you so much for that.
Any questions on that so far?
Samji has a question.
Yeah, Nitinji, I mean, when you asked this question to us, at this point of time, we have experienced neither, right? Brahmanand or Premanand. So how can we answer that? It's only based on theory.
True.
What we heard from God, saints, God is saying.
You cannot answer, I cannot answer, nobody can understand that. I'm just saying, logically speaking, something which is heavier or lower. I'm just thinking about the material sense, right? We can only speculate in terms of theory at this point. Okay?
Yeah.
Unless we experience, we cannot get there. But Tattva Gyan is 50% of the spiritual battle is having proper knowledge, and rest 50% is how do we implement it. Right? But that 50% has to be rock solid. We cannot be second guessing about it every second day. That is the key.
Okay.
Yes, Sandhya ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. I mean, yeah, we haven't experienced. There's a long way to go, but I think this little blissful feeling of feeling the love towards God itself, I think, makes us feel that even that needle will be heavier. That's one thing. Another thing was we have a new participant joined us today, Narendra ji from India, and yeah, and he also has asked a question. Yeah, he wanted you to explain this slide once again.
Which one? This one?
This one only, I guess. Yeah, and maybe he can raise his hand and speak to us.
Yeah, Narendra ji, if you can unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you. Now, Swamiji said one more thing. I loved it. He was talking about yoga, and we'll come back to you, Narendra ji. And then he explained yoga, Ayurveda. He was explaining, and then he went into the Kapha, Vata, and Pitta aspects of it, right? And he said that if they are in balance, that's how our body remains healthy. But if they go out of balance, that's where the diseases start. And then he said there is one thing that brings them into balance. And then he said, are there any Ayurvedic doctors out there? And that one thing that brings it into balance immediately is love. Okay? So love is the most powerful emotion, even in the material side. You can only imagine what it would mean on the divine side when we actually perfect that love, selfless love that God basically keeps on talking about, right? Even Bible's one commandment, right? Jesus was asked if you were to give one commandment instead of, pick up one commandment out of all that you have given, he gave one. Love God with all thy heart and all thy might. Love thy neighbor also, he said. So that is the power of love, right? Even in Bhagavatam, it says, he said, although I am supremely independent, but with the power of love of a devotee, I am enslaved. That is the power of love. That is how important this is. So you can theoretically at least try to conceptualize it. Obviously, when we will become God realized, we'll get better clarity on it. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Narendra ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Are you able
Fault basically. So since I joined this platform for the first day, this is my first time on this platform. In between, I was asking some questions to Sandhya ma'am, and in that I missed some points when we were talking about which one we have here, Brahmanand, Brahmanand. So I missed those points. This is basically my fault. It's not from other side. So that's why I just wanted to ask, can you explain this once again?
No, I was just trying to explain the concept that
yeah, in brief.
Brahmanand is basically Brahmanand is Brahman Anand, that is the bliss of moksha. Both are spiritual concepts. Okay, none of us have tasted it, but our scriptures say that the bliss of moksha is insipid and insignificant in front of the bliss of the personal form of God. So a lot of people, they worship God as an impersonal Brahman, as light, and they think moksha is the topmost prize of God. Scriptures tell that yes, it's a great aspiration. However, the divine love part of God, right? If you worship God as an Ishtadev in his personal form, and if you get an opportunity to go to his dham and serve him, that bliss actually is much, much more sweet and higher than the bliss of Nirguna Nirakar Brahmanand. That is basically the concept I was trying to explain here. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. The Bhakti, if you have Bhakti, basically, and that can only be achieved through Bhakti. Regardless of which path you are on, Bhakti has to be mixed for us to cross over Maya. That is one concept. Tomorrow we will talk about the Kriya Yoga, the Siddhis, the mystic powers, all those possibilities on this path, and which category do they fall into. It is possible to manifest things levitate in air, all the siddhis, what our scriptures talk about. And the kriya, basically the kundalini jagaran and the chakra meditation, right? We keep on hearing these concepts on the path of spirituality. We'll try to put those in perspective tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
I see Jyotiji hand raised. Please go ahead. Radhe Radhe, Jyotiji.
Radhe Radhe Pallaviji and Nitinji and everybody. So what I understand Mukti to be is that it is the suicide of the soul. At that point, we know that soul is indestructible and it is eternal. But when it does the Sayujya Mukti, where it is merging with the Nirakar Brahman, at that point we are saying enough with this life. We don't want to come back into this world, and you are committing quote unquote suicide of the soul. There is some satisfaction to it, so we are not going to be born again, but there is no joy that we can get from personal association with Bhagwanji. And the practical example that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam is from Dhruv. Dhruv first does all this penances because he wants to sit in his father's lap. But when he gets the darshan of Bhagwanji and Bhagwanji offers him, whatever he wants in the world to the point of mukti, he says he wants to live eternally serving Bhagwanji. So to this day, he is living on Dhruv Tara, where he is always serving Bhagwanji, not only him, but his mom too. And whoever follows him, whoever has that same thought or same belief or same wish for Bhagwanji, to serve Bhagwanji, will attain Dhruv Tara. And at that point, when the material world gets annihilated, Dhruv Tara remains until the next world gets created, and you can eternally be in association of Bhagwanji. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice. Beautiful example of Dhruv. Bhagavatam has so many good stories, right? Dhruv, Pranas and all. Yeah, so this concept is same as like when you have fever, you take a medicine and then you get well. Then getting well, is that all? Then you want to do something, right? So that is the difference between that. It's just getting well. When you talk about getting moksha, you got well. You got above miseries and everything. But after you get well, you want to do something. And that happens in the path of bhakti, where you say, God, I want to serve you because my association with you is that of a Nityadas. I'm your part, and the constitutional duty of a part is to serve the whole. Like hand has to serve the stomach, right? Each part has to serve the whole, and it's in serving, what you get in return is much higher than that bliss of Brahmanand. So that happens only in bhakti. And within bhakti also there are so many categories. You start with Sankhya, you think of God as your king. Then you say, no, I will think of God as my master, where I can touch his feet, like Hanuman had that association. And you would say, no, I would go even further. I will consider him my friend so that I can put my arm around him. You go even further. You say, no, I would like to treat him like my kid. Like Yashoda Maiya, she could even beat him up with a stick, right? And he would shiver in front of her. And you can go even further. You say, no, I will treat him like my beloved, because all the relationships automatically come under that relationship. So those bhavs, and within love also there are so many categories. So in spiritual realm, there's no limit where you can actually take it to, and that those possibilities open up only in the path of devotion, not on the path of Gyan. Because in Gyan, once you are in moksha, because that's how you have envisioned God all along, that's what you get up. Okay, let's take a few more questions.
Thank you, Nitinji. Rahulji has mentioned Bhagavatam in the beginning itself mentions Kam, Dharma, Artha and Moksha as Kaitava. Kaitava. Yeah.
Very true. Starting itself, it says, okay, forget these four things, now let's talk, right? So he's already said that. That is why I said where Quran ends, Bible begins, right? Quran says, don't do this, don't do this. Bible says, do this, become good. Where Bible ends, Bhagavad Gita tells, okay, good is fine, but being good is not good enough. You have to go beyond that, Shuddha Sattva, Moksha. Where Bhagavad Gita ends, Bhagavatam begins. It said, all right, moksha is fine, but there are bigger possibilities than that. That is the depths of bhakti. Even when Bhagavatam was written, by Vedvyas, the first thing that he has written, he said, Arodhyam Puni Puni Shastrani. Basically, Vedvyas is churning all the scriptures and said, after churning all the scriptures, is what I'm going to put the distillation here, the glories of God and the Bhakti part of it. So Vedvyas, who's written all the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, scriptures, he's saying after churning all the scriptures, now I'm putting the cream of scriptures in Bhagavatam. And that is why Bhagavatam is called Bhagavatam Mahapurana. And this is where we get all the depths of Bhakti that we are talking about, much beyond moksha. All right.
Now unmute Rahulji. I think it was that couplet you would like to recite. Rahul?
Radhe Radhe. I think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also mentioned that Moks Vanchat Kaitav Pradhan. So he has also mentioned that. And in Bhagavatam, I think Maharaj Trilekhu has mentioned that Swarg, Narak and Moksha are equal because these are devoid of pure love for God. And that is the missing part. So you can see that.
High aspiration. See, rejecting moksha, mukti, devotee has to be rock solid for sure. Very true. All right, any announcements, Pallaviji? Okay, by the way, we have family camp. If you have not registered, please do. Okay, this is your time to do that. It's going to be an awesome lecture series. So please do. And it's at a very nominal price. So that's what I would like to encourage you to do that. Any other announcements, Pallaviji, before we can take some remaining hands?
Main announcement is about that the countdown has already begun for family camp. So until 21st June, we can register, and the family camp is starting from 24th June until it will keep going on until 30th June. So please do not miss this chance. Online registration is also available at a nominal rate. So if we are not able to be present in person, then please take advantage of at least online registration as well.
Thank you so much for that. So tomorrow we'll have a session and then the retreat starts. So I think we'll have to have a break during that time period. But we can relish the bliss of all the lectures, and hopefully I can collect a lot of knowledge that I can bring back to the sessions. I have so many things from yoga session as well, but I'll keep bringing it to the sessions from time to time, but it's going to be a bit of a break. So I'll definitely miss the sessions, but I think we can partake the nectar of Swamiji's lectures around that time. So that will more than offset it. Yes, yeah. Let's take the remaining hands.
Yes, Shyamji, Radhe Radhe, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Hearing you after a long time.
Thank you, Radhe Radhe. Just wanted to share my experience because as I told you earlier also that we have done this topic earlier also. As always, I always wanted to look for moksha. I told you today also. I want moksha and I don't want to come back again. But since I've heard your lecture, I guess it was the last year. Since then, the state of mind has changed. I do not know what I may say will make sense or not. But no, I do not want moksha. I just want the bliss. I do not, as Dhruti said, that Dhruv Tara is there. He wanted God's presence everywhere. I cannot compare myself with anything, but the state of mind has changed for the last 1 year. I just want bliss. Earlier, I only wanted to gain mukti and moksha. I was fed up over this material things, all the spiritual things, religious things. I was a religious person throughout my life, but after I heard this lecture the first time, then I have just my state of mind has changed. Nothing has changed. I just want Bhakti now, no matter how, when, where, how. Mukti is out of my mind totally. I don't even think of it nowadays. I just want Bhakti should be there. If I come back in any, as you said, any form, it doesn't make me any better or worse, but any form I come back, and if I can relish the God's Bhakti, I am true. I'm there. I'm a done deal. I don't want to be puri. I want to be atta, flour, in any form which you want me to be in. That's my say. Radhe Radhe.
Wonderful, Shyamji. The only thing is, the devotee doesn't even ask for bliss. He says, just give me bhakti. Why do you need bhakti? So that I can get more bhakti. What will you do with your bhakti? I'll do more bhakti. So the bliss is also a natural consequence of
bliss is a byproduct of it. I totally get that, because you don't want that. It's already there. You are there. So what do you want more? As I've got this form, I don't want even form. I'm already there. Same way, it's already there. I do not know what I'm saying. I can feel it or not, but I'm already there. I guess it makes sense what I'm saying.
Wonderful. Very true. So Bhakt actually has that sentiment. It's good to actually start building those sentiments. The good devotee actually asks nothing from God. It's only bhakti, and that's about it. Rest all God takes care of it, right?
Yes,
Tomorrow,
I guess it just follows away. My trust you me for last couple of years, it's just following me. I am not wanting anything from God. I just want Him. I just don't want Him in His love also. I just want Him. As simple as that. And I just told you earlier also, the day I meet Him, it's been a tough fight between Him and me. That's for sure. But I'm waiting for that day, and I guess I can recall that moment also, because I know once I'm there, I won't even remember what I am doing, what is going on. But I just pray to Him that maybe He makes me feel that moment when I'm there with Him, and all those things will be out with me. Radhe Radhe.
wonderful. Thank you for expressing your sentiments. That's very inspirational. Loved it. All right. Let's see. I think Keshav.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you for waiting. Again, I think I'm not able to unmute you.
Yeah, we are not able to, Keshavji.
Yeah, I think again it got hung or something. Oh, yes. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Without bhakti, Lord Krishna very clearly said, Bhaktya mam bhi janati yaman yaschasmi tatvata tato man tatvato gyatva vishati tadantaram. Without bhakti, we cannot even know Him. Without bhakti, we cannot know Him. And it is only bhakti will make us understand whom we have to worship, whom we have to surrender. There are so many gods and goddesses in this universe. To whom to worship? That's the key. And the key comes from where? Bhakti. And bhakti is His bliss. And once we get His bliss, we know what He is, how much power He has. He is not, Parmanand and Brahmanand, you put that seesaw. I have made seesaw also earlier in my life. I have made a PowerPoint presentation on Bhagavad Gita with my little knowledge, being a student of Gita. And we are confined into this Brahman. This Brahman being is like a मेंढक कुएं के अंदर. हम एक मेंढक हैं कुएं की तरह. जितने भी हमें सुनते हैं लेक्चर्स इस प्रेजेंट टाइप स्क्रिप्चर लीडर्स से, they are in this Brahman. And we are like just meanders. So we have to come out of this Brahman, Sansara, and we have to cross this ocean of death. And where is that ultimate destination? That is not in this Brahman. That is beyond this Brahman. So that comes with bhakti. We get the gyan of whom we worship. Om Jai Shri Krishna. It's a long discussion. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, very true. It's a long discussion. Very true. So we are in this Brahmand, and then there are so many other Brahmands, and then there is Parvyom.
And there, I would like to say one thing. I'm in California. I go to Yosemite Park. About 10 times I've been there. I attend the NASA people. They show the Milky Way, the stars in the sky, and they take the picture, and then they focus the camera, and they say they are focusing the camera at the, like they call it, black hole. And then after 4 or 5 seconds, the click is there and the shot comes and picture shows other Brahman. They are not in this Brahman, please. They are out of this Brahman. Black hole is out of this Brahman. God's grace, Lord Krishna's, Purushottam Krishna's grace has come to me. And once I felt like he said, मैं जब आया इस ब्रह्मांड में, मैंने गीता ज्ञान दिया, मेरी आज तक किसी ने तारीफ की. अभी मुझे लोग कहते हैं कि मैंने युद्ध करवाया, मैंने ये किया वो किया. You speak what you have got the knowledge. So I want to share that knowledge with each and everyone with little understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Like what you mentioned, Bhagavatam, Vyasa did right, but why? Because Naraji told him, he was desperate. Vyasa, he said, because Gita Gyan people won't get it. So he wanted to support the Bhagavad Gita Gyan through stories of different saints to make understand Bhagavad Gita. That is the Gita. Nothing can beat Bhagavad Gita. Om Jai Shri Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Keshav ji, for your inputs. Yeah, so basically this knowledge is not something that is being pulled out from the thin air. This knowledge comes from Sri Maharaj ji and saints who are realized saints, and they are not limited to one Brahmand. Okay? For them, they have pretty much the entire big holistic 360-degree view of it. Our Milky Way is not even a grain of sand. If this entire creation is a sea beach, our Milky Way is not even a grain of sand. In Krishna Leela, our Brahmaji is the smallest Brahma with 4 heads. There are Brahmas with 10 heads, 20 heads, 30 heads, million heads, trillion heads, infinite heads. So we can only imagine how big the universe is. And Bhagavatam was written because Vedvyas had a dissatisfaction. Even after creating such a big body of knowledge of scriptures, he was feeling a sense of dissatisfaction. He asked Naradji, why does he feel that dissatisfaction? Naradji told him, because what you have written so far is simply, talking about the Vedas and all that stuff, Vidhi Nisheda aspect of it. Nowhere you have glorified the God. Until you do that, you will not have that sense of satisfaction. But you cannot write it until you yourself do devotion first. So then Vedvyas sat down, did devotion, and then he contemplated. Vedvyas contemplated, and he said, Puni Puni Arodhyam Sarva Shastrani. The whole scriptures I am trying to churn and getting the cream out of it, and that is what I'm going to put in here. So it's not an explanation of Bhagavad Gita. It has Bhagavad Gita plus all the scriptural gyan plus much beyond. That is what Mahabhagavad Puran is. Anyways, let's take a couple of other hands and then we'll proceed. Yes, Asha.
Give Sumesh ji a chance first. Yeah. Sumesh ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Nitin ji, I have a question. Are the Swarga, Narka, Moksha is same, or Moksha is the higher than Swarga and Narka? Because Buddha chose the path of Nirvana.
True. Yes, true. It is a figure of speech, Sumeshi. It's like a sentiment of bhakta that, like they say, pap and punya both are pap. Right? Similarly, they say Swarg, Nark and Moksha all are rich. I'll reject. So it is a figure of speech. Of course, Moksha is higher. Swarg is higher than Nark, and Moksha is a spiritual achievement. But it is a sentiment of a devotee where they say, I consider all three equal. Okay, that is the level of devotee, that sentiment he approaches. But of course, you are right. Yes, Moksha is much higher than Swarga and Narka, for sure. It's just the way you express something, right? Because they consider for us doesn't matter. Either we'll go to your abode or we will reject all three. That is what the Bhakt says. So it's figuratively, not literally.
Yeah. Okay. Question is answered, Sumesh ji.
Yeah.
And by the way, this bliss is not an ordinary bliss. When you say you become Rasgulla, right? Rather than tasting the Rasgulla, or we say you become the honey, rather than being that honey, we tasting that honey. It's not an ordinary Rasgulla. It is just a figure of speech again. It is a very high level of bliss. Moksha is not an ordinary feat or achievement, right? You are not going to come back to this earth again. And it is a simultaneous perpetual bliss with perfect knowledge at that point. However, now we are comparing it with Premanand. That is why we are putting it in perspective. Otherwise, moksha is, such a big deal to have, right? It's not an ordinary feat for sure. But Bhakt says, no, we'll reject that too. We want something else. That is the only difference. Right? It's like somebody says, I just want to go to Harvard. I will reject IIT also. That is the idea. Yes, Asha ji?
Yes, Asha ji. Radhe.
There was another thing, Shanti, I got because Asha ji is coming. I wanted to exercise my Hindi before I forget it. So it is the definition of Shanti is Pratikul Paristhiti में भी जब उग्र और
व्यग्र और
व्यग्र ना हो, उग्र और व्यग्र ना हो.
रमेश भाई ओझा हमारे जो गुजरात के हैं,
I loved it when he said
I think so. तो बहुत अच्छी बात कही थी. और मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी कि प्रेमानंद के बारे में हम समझना चाहे तो गोपियों की जो भक्ति की कक्षा थी वो समझना चाहिए. प्रेमानंद सच्चे रूप में किसे कहा जा सकता है, क्योंकि उद्धव जी उन्हें कुछ सिखाने गए थे क्योंकि वो मानते थे कि मैं गोपियों को कुछ ज्ञान दूंगा, मगर जब गोपियों की ये प्रेमानंद वाली स्थिति और भक्ति देखी तब उन्हें पता चला कि नहीं, ये तो भक्ति के बारे में सरेंडर हो गए गोपियों के आगे। तो प्रेमानंद के लिए ये, और राधा जी की जो स्पेशल है वो, उसके बारे में तो कोई कुछ भी, सिर्फ राधा जी की जो है कृष्ण के प्रति वो अलग ही है, मगर ये गोपियों की जो है वो भी एक प्रेमानंद की स्थिति है। आई थिंक सो। थैंक यू।
Very nice. The topmost prize for Jivatma is where gopis reached. What is reserved for Sri Radha, Madanakhya Mahabhav, where Jivatma cannot reach. Like, and even certain things are reserved for Ashtasakis as well. In fact, Sakar is so powerful that even if a Brahmalin gets a little bit of it, right, their mind will be tucked away. Same thing happened to King Janak also. King Janak was a Brahmalin. He was a Vide. He was absorbed in God consciousness all the time. And when he saw Ram for the first time, and when the aroma of Ram fell in his nose for the first time, he felt that tug or that pull towards him that he could not stop. He said, why am I mind? He would not get attached to anything. Just like he said, why am I mind getting attached to this guy? Why can't I stop it? He couldn't figure it out. And that is the power of Sagun Sakar aspect of big Brahmalin, Brahmagyanis, their mind is tucked away. And Krishna is called a Chitta Chor, right? So when he decides to steal your heart, and nobody can resist it.
Okay. वो गोपियों का एग्जाम्पल है ना, कृष्ण का सिर दर्द के लिए वो अपनी चरणों की धूल भी देने को तैयार हो गई कि अपना जो भी हो नरक में जाए तो जाए। जब सबने मना किया था, कृष्ण की रानियों ने और नारद जी ने खुद भी, तो ये सेल्फलेस लव की उनकी कक्षा है। तो वो प्रेमानंद सचमुच में एंजॉय कर रहे थे।
Thank you. In fact, Narad ji once said, I want to see what kind of meditation gopis do. So there was a gopi who was sitting near the Tala, that I think Yamuna probably, and doing some meditation. So I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to get Krishna out of my mind.
Yeah.
To do meditation, doing Krishna, she was doing to get out of my mind.
और वो मथुरा गए तो एक बार भी मिलने नहीं गए, क्योंकि अगर कृष्ण को आना है तो वो आएगा, बाकी वो कृष्ण के साथ ही हर बार कृष्ण के उनके चित्त में रहता था। तो वो उनको मिलने भी पूरी जिंदगी तर से, मगर एक बार भी उन्हें मिलने की चाह नहीं की, रूबरू मिलने की, क्योंकि मन से वो साथ जुड़ी रहती थी। That's what प्रेमानंद they were enjoying, I think so.
Yeah, और उसका कारण ये भी है, it is said that the bliss of Viyog in spiritual way is much higher than the bliss of Sanyog. Those are higher anyways. So Krishna gave that thing which was much higher anyway. They were, his mind right.
ये बहुत गहरी बात है, जो को वियोग को योग से ज्यादा ऊंचा मानना और उसको अनुभव करना।
और इसमें दो कैटेगरीज थी गोपीज की। वन कैटेगरी which would feel संयोग even during viyog, and the category which would feel viyog even during sanyog, that was higher. So even when they were meeting, they were feeling okay, the pangs of separation, that was the level of. So anyways, those are deeper topics, we'll get to it some other. But the point here is,
no words can explain that.
I mean, these you can only conceptualize these things. Krishna is called Rasa Sindhu. Anything that we derive kick or bliss from in this world, the source of that is Krishna, and we get excited with material things. Now, Krishna is Ras Sindhu. If he decides to take control of your mind, one can only imagine that state, right? And that is what happened with gopis because of their selfless devotion. But it needs a lot of purity, selflessness to actually gain that eligibility. Where Krishna says, okay, I'm going to make my house your head now. Okay, let's see where you go. It's a huge privilege, right? But we have to earn it. It's a process. So. Good, great discussion today. Anything last closing comments? And tomorrow we are going to talk a little bit about siddhis and all that stuff. Those some of the things which distract people and can confuse people, right? Because there are so many ways we approach this thing. So we'll try to put those in perspective as well. Okay, anybody?
Yeah, Nitinji, Sunitji has message in the chat that these are golden nuggets, very deep concepts. So hope we get the slides for that.
Golden nuggets, sure, Sunitji, let's talk about that. But yeah, this is very deep knowledge, and this is all because of Maharajji and Swamiji. It is made accessible to us. And trust me, this knowledge we can not get anywhere on this planet, no matter where you go. You can scratch the surface, but only a Rasik saint, only a Avatari Purush can tell you these deeper secrets about spirituality with so much of assurance and bibliographical scriptural reference. Nobody else can, no matter where you go. So we are extremely lucky to be getting this knowledge, and hopefully we can digest it and utilize it for our spiritual progress. Yes, Rahul, anything last?
Yes, Rahulji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Even in the Bhakti Fest, Hari Anandji played one of the bhajans where it was like the lyrics were Bhukti na de, Mukti na de, Prem Sudha de.
I know.
The final full stop. Radhe Radhe.
Bhukti na de, Mukti na de, Prem Sudha de. I know. This is reiterated so many times in Maharajji's bhajans. Right? Reject all these. This is a blemish on the path of if you go for Mukti. That is how it's looked down upon. Okay, all right. Let's do our... Yes, Surendraji?
I think it must be for closing prayers.
Yes, let's do our closing prayers for the day then.
Prem Sudha will lead to the moksha.
Which one? Sorry?
Prem Sudha.
Prem Sudha is not moksha, it's divine love.
No, lead to. Prem Sudha is...
Prem Sudha, moksha is a maid servant, is a dasi of Bhakti. Bhukti and Mukti are both dasi, the maid servant of Bhakti. So yes, if you get Bhakti, they are byproducts. Bhakta says, okay, stay away from us. We are just not interested in you.
Thank you very much. May I have the opportunity for the closing prayers?
Sure. It will be our honor to hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had the best time in my life at Sarang Nivas. That much I must confess.
Yeah, my parents said that they also had a great time meeting you, and I saw all of your pictures and looked like you all had a good time. I was missing all the action there, but
I would like to also name this place as Kaushal Mansion. It is more of a mansion. As I visited the 3 floors, oh, fantastic.
I'm glad you could make it there, and my parents enjoyed thoroughly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyit dukha bhag bhave. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Surendraji. Thank you, everybody, for a very engaging discussion today. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Stay safe, stay blessed, and wish you a devotion full of day ahead and rest of your evening. Thank you.
We always look forward to the next day. Thank you very much. With you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So nice.
Thank you for the opportunity. Radhe Radhe.
God bless us. God bless us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitinji, for such an awesome session again. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic.
Yeah, have a blessed day. Have a blessed day. Radhe Radhe, everyone.
Radhe Radhe.